Alrighty, what have we got today? Renaissance and Hinterlands. I think that's it. Yeah, looks like it. So first thing that jumps out to me is there's no trashing whatsoever. So you're stuck with all your starting cards. Villages are also very limited. I believe the only village here is Crossroads, which only the first copy functions as a village. So you've got one double village to work with. So you play 3 terminals per turn. If you want to play more terminals on the later turns, you can use patrons to bank up the villagers. Like if on the early turns you play Crossroads, Old Witch, Patron, you bank villagers, and then you can play more later. That will probably come up. So despite the limitations, I think you're still building here. There's also no plus buy. I haven't mentioned that yet. But there are gainers between Weaver and Sculptor. And notably, there's Highway. You play 4 highways, and all of a sudden your Sculptors and Weavers can gain anything in the game. I presume that's the end goal that we're working towards. Play 4 highways, sculpt and or weave a bunch of provinces. Weaver synergizes with Scholar. Discard your hand, you activate all your Weavers. I don't think that's worth it over the Sculptor gain to hand effect. Just because, again, villages are limited, and so I think you mostly want to be drawing with stables because it's non-terminal. You can play like 10 stables a turn just fine, but you can't play 10 scholars. And so I think Scholar is an awkward card. I mean, you could add a Scholar just to activate your Weavers, but then if you've drawn your deck with stables and you pitch that hand with Scholar, that's just awkward. So I don't think this interaction is worth pursuing, but maybe. I think probably the main goal is play a bunch of Sculptures. With a Highway, by the way, Sculpture can gain Sculptures. He has Sculptural cost 4, and then you can gain. You could empty the Sculptor pile if you had enough villages, which you won't here, but in other kingdoms you could. And then, all that being said, long-term goal, highways, Sculptor provinces, play a bunch of stables. I think the short-term goal is play Old Witch a bunch, because I think losing the curse split will hurt a lot. So, how to hit 5? Turn 2 buy, definitely Patron. It's a silver, helps you hit 5, helps you store up villagers, which is an effect that we're definitely going to want. Not sure what the turn 1 buy is. I think any of Silver, Crossroads, and Scheme have their merits. Silver is a card that I really don't want in the deck at all long term, but does help you hit 5, so it could be justified. Scheme, pretty much a nothing buy as far as hitting 5 goes. The only case that even helps you is if you find Scheme and Patron turn 3, and you need to play Patron twice in a shuffle. But definitely a card that will become relevant shortly later for top-decking Old Witch and playing it more frequently. And then Crossroads, generally not great at hitting 5 because if the hands where it draws the most cards already tend to have a bunch of estates in them. So like if your hand was Crossroads, Copper, Estate, and you play the Crossroads, you're going to draw at best 2 more coppers and hit 4. Or Crossroads, Copper, Triple Estate, you draw 3 more cards, probably 3 coppers, and you're hitting 4. So it often hits 4, but one upside is if you line up with Patron, Crossroads reveals your hand, and so it actually would get you a villager. I think I'm going to say Scheme first. We can take a Crossroads now. I think both of the cards, Crossroads and Scheme, are better if they line up with Patron. And I think between the two, Scheme seemed a little bit less reliable, or more reliable in cases where it doesn't. And there's potentially very sad hands with like Crossroads and 4 coppers that I would like to avoid. Anyways, Old Witch. And do I want the Patron on top? I'll put the Scheme back on top. Please draw Crossroads. No such luck. Second Old Witch. God dang it. So my bottom 5 cards had the crossroads in them, and it just happened to be the very last card. So now I'm gonna lose my villager. Sad. I mean, I get it back from Patron, but I would have gone up to 2 villagers here if that crossroads had been anywhere else in the deck. I don't think a 3rd Old Witch is necessary. That's probably overkill. I don't think it's time for gains yet. I think my goal remains just play Old Witch a bunch. So I'm going to say stables, just to cycle through the coppers. And could definitely think about Sculptor now. I think I'm just going to say 1 more stables. I would be most happy if I could just win the curse split and then think about this stuff later. Bot has 2 sculptures already. Oh boy, I get a coffer. Sculptor now. My one hesitation was this sculptor actually isn't great until I have a highway, because most of what I want it to gain at the moment costs 5. But the highway is definitely not doing me any good until I have a sculptor. And so, at least for the time being, the sculptor could potentially gain like a scheme or something. Given this draw, it's not going to be gaining anything. I don't think it's worth a villager. But in theory, there might have been hands where the sculptor gained being a extra scheme or something. Yeah, so hands like this, I think, are indicative of why I think it's more reliable to scheme an Old Witch rather than a stables. There are curses in the deck. And a stables, contrary to its name, is one of the least stable of the draw cards. Because you have to find it with your treasures. Okay. Don't think there's anything down there that's important to draw. There's just 3 coppers on an estate. So I think I'd rather use this last villager for the turn to gain and play an extra sculptor here. Take a stables, another stables. I'm going to scheme the crossroads now, I think. I had at least an estate on top. So, it's a cantrip. I might regret this, seeing my current hand. I do think I would like another scheme or 2. So I could scheme Crossroads and Old Witch. Make me feel a lot better about my shuffles. Kingdoms like this where Crossroads is like the only action necessary to kick off, I think it's often worth taking 2 of them. Even if you only intend to play 1. Just because the downside case of not finding your 1 village the whole deck relies on can be very big. In this case, I think it's better to just use scheme to resolve that problem. Okay, well now we have 2 schemes in the deck. Let's go ahead and take another highway. Maybe just 1 more stables. I don't know that I have enough draw yet. Duchy. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. Doesn't feel like the bot really has a handle on this kingdom. I think definitely you got to build the deck that can gain a bunch of provinces at once. But let's say you You were a little bit overly pessimistic on the engine, and you thought money was more viable, and you're trying to win the game by just buying provinces one at a time. Which, if this kingdom were slightly weaker, that might be feasible. You definitely would want to take a duchy here, because the win condition for the big money deck versus the engine is lower the provinces as quickly as you can. And duchy is slowing your deck down, not building it up. The 3 extra points are not likely to matter. The 1 extra turn before my deck kicks off is likely to matter. And so I think if you're playing big money versus an engine, early duchies are not the move. Big money versus big money, duchies can make total sense. But here I think your goal is just either you're buying a province or you're buying something that helps you hit province, because you can empty provinces ASAP. Anyway, bottom card is a copper. I don't really feel like I'm on the clock. There's still 7 provinces. If I were close to losing, I could try to take the highways here and win in a turn or two, but I think I'd rather just keep taking draw cards. Which crossroads? Spot still on those duchies. It's actually a little bit of an annoyance how bad the box deck is, because I really like to just build up to playing, I don't know, like 4 sculptors, sculpt 4 provinces and buy a duchy, for example, and then win when the bot has lowered provinces to 4. Unfortunately, there's 7 provinces, and I don't think it's worth building a deck that can take 7 provinces in a turn. Because again, the big limitation is the villages, and I cannot easily play that many sculptors. So I'm going to have to green over 2 turns because the bot has not lowered provinces enough for me. Take 1 more highway. I can take a province or 2 here, I guess. Like I said, if provinces were a little bit lower, I'd probably just try to build a deck that takes 4 provinces in 1 turn. But the bot's deck is kind of doing nothing. And so I think it's going to be on me to take all 7 provinces across a few turns. Can burn one of these villagers, now gaining an extra sculptor. And this is hopefully threatening a win next turn. Thinking hard. I think the bot gets a little bit confused sometimes when there's no realistic way for it to win, because every option just looks approximately equally bad. I thought it made sense to play the Old Witch in Stables here before the Crossroads, because at this point I have a bunch of green cards in my deck, and I like to maximize the amount my Crossroads ends up drawing. Alrighty, that's the Kingdom. What happened here? The bot must have lost the curse split really bad, is what I'm gathering. Its deck was just never functional. Even, like, just straight up big money should have been more competitive than that. I think it must have had really bad shovels early on, huh? It opened Silver Patron, which I think is reasonable, and it did find Old Witch turn 3. So why does it have a bunch of curses in its deck and I don't? Second Patron turn 4. Old Witch didn't bottom deck. Okay, my assessment is bot starts out fine. It opens with Silver and Patron and gets an Old Witch. Like turns 1 through 3 make sense. But then I think it's like turns 4 onward are a little bit too focused on adding payload. It takes a bunch of patrons and a bunch of sculptors, which are mostly just there to slow down the deck. You know, it's like adding a bunch of silvers to your deck, basically. And so with a bunch of extra silvers, you're playing your Old Witch less often. As opposed to, you know, Scheme helps you find your Old Witch more often. A second Old Witch would help. Stables to cycle to your Old Witch. And so I think all of that probably contributed to the bot losing the curse split pretty badly. You know, I was looking at, okay, eventual goal is Sculptor and Highways and stuff, but you want to put that off while there's cursing to be done. And I was prioritizing either just buying Old Witches or stuff that helps me play Old Witches more, and then adding payload after the curses were about empty. So I think that's probably where the bot fell behind, but then also, like, it never tries to build the engine or anything. I also don't think that money looks like it can win here. Engine's not phenomenal or anything, but I think it's more than sufficient.